Once upon a time.
There are strange things done in the midnight sun by men who mourn for gold. The Arctic trails hold secret tales. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by men who mourn for gold. The Arctic trails hold secret tales that could make your blood run cold. Oh, the northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge. I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from old Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home from the south to roam around the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him in a spell. Though he'd often say, in a shivering way, that he'd sooner live in hell than one frozen night as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow. And the dogs had been fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel and toe. He turns to me and Cap, says he, I'll cash it in this trip I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he looked so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a moan, it's the cursed cold, it's finally got a hold, till I'm chilled clean to the bone. Yet it ain't being dead that I greatly dread, it's the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul affair, you'll cremate my last remains. Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore that I would not fail. And we set on at the streak of dawn, but oh, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched in the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And by nightfall a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. Then I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and there an old shipwreck black lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher and higher. The flames they soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom ever see. Then I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. I don't know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars had come out and they danced all about ere again I ventured near. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see for a mile, and he yelled, "Quick, close that door." It feels fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree way down in Tennessee, it's the very first time I've been born. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by men who mourn for gold. The Arctic trails hold secret tales that could make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see, it was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Just as the title says, that was the Robert Service poem, a masterpiece of a poem, The Cremation of Sam McGee, that I tried to set to music. And I left out quite a few verses just to make the sort of the runtime of the song more bearable for me, because it's a lot of the melody that I came up with, it's a lot of the same thing sort of over and over, with the exception of the chorus, which is the first and last stanza of the poem. So I left a lot of verses, or stanzas rather, out, not because they're not good ones, they're some of the best ones actually, but I just tried to stick to sort of the essential points of the plot. And a lot of the stanzas that I left out are more establishing of mood and imagery. Just a few of them. There's actually, so I left out one that's kind of a precursor to the night that Sam makes his last request, and I think it's just to illustrate the struggle, the hard time that Sam was having, and it's about mushing. It says, one Christmas day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk about your cold right through the parka's fold. It stabbed just like a driven nail. If our eyes we closed, then the lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't even see. It weren't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. I love that simile The cold was stabbing them like nails right through their parka. And I love the idea. I wouldn't want to experience it, but the idea of that it's so cold that if you close your eyes, your eyelashes freeze together and then you can no longer see. That's pretty brutal there. So I don't blame Sam one bit for whimpering, especially since he came from down south. So the contrast in temperatures for him was probably especially bitter. Contrast in what he's used to. So there was that stanza that I left out. And then most of the stanzas that I left out take place from the point when Sam dies to the point that the speaker finds the derelict, which I changed the words there to shipwreck just so it would be kind of more accessible and everybody would know what I was talking about. But he finds a derelict, which is the Alice May. But I left out several stanzas that happen between those 2 points because in the poem, the speaker drags the deceased Sam around for days. And it's just, he's very creeped out by it, but at the same time, he's very determined. He talks about the code of the trail, which is if you give your word, then you're going to make good on your word if it's the last thing that you do. Some of the creepy imagery, here, there's a stanza that says, in the long, long night, by the lone firelight, as the huskies round in a ring, howled out their woes to the homeless snows. Oh, how I loathe that thing. So he's sitting around the campfire at night with the corpse, and the huskies are howling, and there's just complete emptiness. There's nobody else, just him, the dogs, and the corpse. So that's kind of a creepy thing, a creepy moment. And then there's also a stanza where he's driving around with him in the sleigh, and just to pass the time, he kind of sings to the corpse, and it says the corpse harkens back with a grin, which is kind of creepy. Maybe that was just the expression, the last expression that Sam McGee had, and it's kind of frozen in place. This is a poem that I used to do every year with my 6th graders, and they absolutely loved it. I would kind of warn them that, there's going to be some creepiness in this, but if you'll hang on with me, it's going to be okay in the end. You're going to like this poem. And I love the poem, but one of the main reasons that I did it is it's so rich. Pretty much every literary device that there is used in this poem. We already talked about simile, there's metaphor, there's personification, there's onomatopoeia. That's another verse that I left out where it's kind of very graphic really, but he leaves Sam in the fire because he doesn't like to hear him sizzle so, which is not only onomatopoeia, but also alliteration. So it's almost like every stanza in this poem is just chock full of all these literary devices. There's even synecdoche when he's talking about roaming around the pole. Obviously they're not just going around the North Pole, but that's a synecdoche right there. And then the internal rhyme is off the charts. The amount of internal rhyme is why I can sit here, not look at the poem at all, and sing all those verses. Supposedly, I think it's pretty well documented, English poetry had no rhyme until after the Norman invasion of 1066. So our use of rhyme in English poetry was taken from the French. It's almost hard to imagine, no rhyme, but prior to that point in time, English poetry I don't think had any rhyme. But this poem, of course, has end rhyme, but then it has internal rhyme, and that makes it so much easier to remember because whatever you say, or in this case, whatever you sing, the very next line has to rhyme with it, so that just kind of helps you keep putting all those little pieces in place as you tell the story. I normally, for the story song series, I normally don't do spoken commentary, but in this case I thought it would be kind of appropriate to do that. I mentioned that I used to do this every year with my sixth graders, and students always really, really enjoyed the poem, as did I. I enjoyed teaching it. I can remember one of my students, Chelsea Stefani, so at Martins Creek, I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So that meant I would have the same students for 3 years in a row, which would really allow you to build upon what you did. You know, you weren't passing them off to another teacher. They were looping right back to you. And so you could get, in 3 years' time, you could get pretty advanced with your literary studies. And I remember Chelsea, when we were in 8th grade, she begged me, can we read the Cremation of Sam McGee again? Can we just kind of analyze that one more time? Even though we'd really kind of milked it, so to speak, for almost everything it was worth back in 6th grade. And as a compromise, I told her, I said, no, we really can't do that. We've got other things that we have to do. But I just hopped on eBay, and I remember I found a really old hardback edition of Robert Service poems, and I just presented that to Chelsea. And it cost like, I don't know, $13 or something. It was really cheap, even though it was really old and in good shape. I said, you know, we can't read Sam McGee, but here you go. You can read it. You can study it, and all these other Robert Service poems. He had a lot of great poems, but to me that is the best one. He had a sort of sequel to it, which was the shooting of not Sam, but Luke, maybe, something. The shooting of Luke McGraw or Stan McGraw or something. You know, it was a one-syllable first name and then a McGraw, kind of like McGee. And it's not bad, but that it pales in comparison to the Cremation of Sam McGee. So in the description below there, I'll put a link. Probably can't just put the entire poem, so I'll put a link where you can go read the entire poem, including the stanzas that I left out. And I hope you enjoyed this version, or I'm sorry, this attempt to set it to music. If anyone's watching this and you are a teacher and you've read the Sam McGee poem with your class and you want to use this in some way, have at it. You have my complete permission. It's a very sort of simple melody that I just came up with to try to tell the song while the music or the beat is going. So you're welcome to use it. I would love to know, though, if you use it. So if you're a teacher and you wind up playing any portion of this for your students, please give me a comment or email or something to let me know that you did so. Back to the story song series. Let's see, there's something else I was going to share before I wrap up here. The ending of the poem. So when we would, in addition to looking at all the literary devices and just everything in this very, very rich poem, I would also ask my students, what do you make of this ending? And you'd be surprised how many different sort of theories that you can come up with for why the poem ends the way that it does. And now I would hear their ideas on it, and what I would usually give as my idea is it was Robert Service being very playful and showing that you thought you were reading one genre, but I, as the author, I can flip a switch, and at the drop of a hat, now it's a different genre, because it's realism. The poem is realism up until that second to last stanza, and then it becomes a tall tale, and you have the silliness of him sitting in there and saying, "Shut the door, I'm wanting to stay warm." It was all serious. It was all realistic until that moment. So to me, it was just a genre switch that Service wanted to pull off, but he did so in a really, not just a simple, although the switch happened very suddenly and so to speak at the end, you can also look back through the poem and you can develop other sort of trains of thought that were pointing to how this was going to end. Not that you could know completely ahead of time, but then once you see the ending, looking backward, you can see those moments. For example, there's such a cool moment of foreshadowing. So in about the third stanza, something like that, when Sam is complaining about just the nature of what they're doing and how cold it is and how miserable it is, what does he say? He says he would sooner live in hell. So where does he wind up? He winds up in a burning furnace. And then that starts to make you wonder, and I don't mean on a 100% level, but on some level to wonder, was he faking it? Was it all an elaborate ruse, pretending to be dead just so he could ride in the sleigh and stay covered up and not have to work as hard, and then he could get this big fire built for him so he could really get nice and toasty and warm. It's just kind of funny to think about that. But there is that piece of foreshadowing that he'd sooner live in hell. Now, in another stanza, which I did not sing, as the speaker's driving around with the corpse, he says, "I felt half mad." Now, Americans, when we say mad, we mean angry. But British usually mean mentally ill. To go mad means to lose your mind. So if he was half mad, was he hallucinating when he looked into the furnace? Was Sam not alive, but he was hallucinating? Because several stanzas talk about the extreme stress that was being imposed on the speaker. Did he snap? Did he break? He talks about sweating in the cold from all this stress and this determination. It talks about taxing his brawn, his physical strength, and his brains to manage to get this done. It would be a hard thing to carry out anyway, but if you're in, 70 below zero weather, how are you going to cremate somebody? But you promised that you would. Did he lose it a bit? Is that what's happening at the end? So all those things, I guess, are possible. I don't know if Robert Service was ever asked about it, if he ever gave any kind of interview, but I think that's the beauty of the piece of art there, that there's all those intricacies and things kind of going on at play in terms of the ending and the building, the process that led up to that ending. But every Friday, Lord willing, in the month of March, we'll have another story song. And I'm going to try to, while the story song series is going on, still keep up with the Old Timey Tuesday and Original Thursday. So for the month of March, that means 3 videos per week. So I really have my work cut out for me. But thank you for watching, and tune in. Let's see, so if you're watching this, today's Friday, tune in next Tuesday. I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and there an old shipwreck lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher and higher. The flames they soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom ever see. I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. I don't know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars had come out and they danced all about, ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess that he's cooked, and it's past time I looked. Then the door I flung open wide, and there sat Sam, looking cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace room. And he wore a smile you could see for a mile, and he yelled, "Quick, close that door. It feels fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm." Since I left Plum Tree way down in Tennessee, it's the very first time I've been born. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by men who mourn for gold. The Arctic trails hold secret tales that could make your blood run cold. Oh, the northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see, it was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee.